Hi, everyone. I'm just going to talk to you a little bit today about my I was in the Fellows Cohort 3 group and what I did while I was working both on Biodata Catalyst platform powered by 7Bridges and for my thesis, actually. So my goal was to develop a sensitive detection methodology for Plasmodium, the parasite that causes malaria in sub-Saharan Africa. Specifically, this was a TopMed project called Africa 6K, which will be digested by the platforms probably in the future next freeze. So next slide, please. Back up. I think there's a click that happened there. Okay, yeah, so the first 2 points, just to give you a little bit of context about my research, because I think it's really important for us to realize why we're doing things. So malaria is an infectious disease that causes 247 million cases and over 600,000 deaths in 2021 and the years prior. And the reason that this is important is because we've been trying to fight to get rid of it across the globe. And right now, the majority of this disease burden is caused by Africa. There's 2 reasons why I highlighted this. As you can see in this map, right next to the blurbs of information, that's where all of my research was from sub-Saharan Africa. So it's important to pick a disease that's relevant to these people and the places where we're doing the research. So my goal was to develop a methodology using only human whole genome sequencing data, obviously through TopMed, to be able to detect this parasite in these populations to retrospectively diagnose them. And as you can see through the pie charts, we actually found a really exciting thing where we could do it on the species specific level, which is really important in malaria. And we found a pretty big diversity of species across the different countries that were involved in the population. And then finally, if you want to do the last click, so we can bring the last blurb up. Obviously, it's really exciting that I made this methodology using only the unmapped reads from human WGS data. But what we found, does it actually work within the context of historical data? Because when you're building something like this, you really want to make sure that it makes logical sense. And I'm happy to report the most exciting thing about this project is the estimations we're finding are really falling in line with 2 very prevalent databases on malaria prevalence, which is the Malaria Atlas Project, which works primarily in children, so they tend to have a really high measure of prevalence, and then the WHO, which is just countrywide. And as you can see in the column right there, most of our numbers are falling directly in between these 2, which just means that what we're finding really makes sense, and we're really confident in the pipeline that I built. So moving forward, next slide. This is all well and great. I think my research is really interesting, and if you would like to read it, the next slide has the paper that is correlated with this research. But what I did may not be as applicable to what you want to do, so I want to highlight some of the things that the platform really provided for me that you could perhaps adapt for yourself. This actually already came up in conversation just a little bit ago. How I accessed the CRAN files to be able to do this research was a really big plus for me. So the easy access was when you get your sequencing data from the Broad, they just put it into a Google bucket, and we were able to completely cut out the time and cost of downloading all of our CRAN files individually by just connecting it directly to the platform, which was amazing. The next thing is there was a high parallelization that took some of the steps of my research that were taking days and in some cases weeks, and took them and reduced the time that it took significantly. So I have one example where something that took nearly 5 days on a local machine was less than 6 hours on the platform. And that's pretty useful for any type of research, not just mine. And then finally, this population from TopMed is actually shared between 2 specific laboratories, one at Case where I'm at, and then the University of Pennsylvania. And sharing the results and the workflows that I used was really easy to just have the collaborators log on and be able to see everything that I did. And it's important because some of the files that I process is going to be translated into other research for them. So one more slide. And so if any of those things apply to you and you're really excited about getting onto the ecosystem, here's some advice for you. Some of these things have already been said, but I think it's just really important for these kind of things to be repeated so that it sticks. Um, the number one thing is utilize the help and resources that they have built for you. So, for example, I worked on Seven Bridges. There are tons of things that you can turn to if you're feeling stuck or not getting where you want to be. There's written resources, and then obviously all of the staff have been incredibly helpful in my research. And I believe that they're there for everyone who is using the platform. And that's just really helpful to keep going. And then finally, evaluate the apps available on the public repository before assuming you need to build one. There's a massive information when you go onto the cloud platform, but always check to see if the analysis you want to do are already up instead of assuming that you have to do it yourself. And then finally, I think this was said before, create full workflows incrementally. So doing little digestible pieces make it a lot easier to determine what may or may not be going wrong instead of making like a 14-step pipeline all in one step. If you want to know a little bit more about my research or see exactly what I did on the cloud, I do have a GitHub that goes step by step through how I did my research on Seven Bridges. And then finally, this paper is currently in the final steps of being reviewed by collaborators, and we plan to submit it by the end of the year, which was my biggest and most exciting accomplishment using the cloud platform so far.